Hi, I'm Rabbi Dan Selsberg of Beth Jacob Synagogue here in Hamilton, Ontario. And this is Mitzvah Tube. This is the Dvar Torah for the second day of Rosh Hashanah, 5773, 2012. It's called Growing Up. It was the day before my sister-in-law's wedding this past July, and we were eating dinner. It was a celebratory atmosphere, of course, and the entire family was enjoying the weekend. But then, another one of our totally unreasonable rules for our kids reared its head. No dessert unless you eat dinner. There was a protest and, I guess, a hunger strike of sorts. We were locked in the classic middle-class parent-child power struggle, a refusal to eat anything but junk food on one side, and on the other, a refusal to completely cave in. When he didn't eat, no bargaining down. When the cake came out, it was too late. Dinner was long gone. There were some angry words of protest, and then silence. Then my son looked up at me with his doleful brown eyes and said, very gently, "Daddy, you know it's funny that aunts and uncles and grandparents give you a lot of what you want, dessert and stuff, and parents don't." As most parents would do in this situation, I looked around for the teleprompter to see just who was feeding him these lines, but he had figured it all out on his own. Parents are the mean ones, everyone else is sweetness and light. But the funny thing about it is, I responded, that if Mommy and I treated you the way they treat you, they'd yell at us for being bad parents and spoiling you. Go figure. And then we lapsed back into silence. As with many other areas of parenting, I have no idea if I'm doing the right thing or not, creating food anxieties or not, poisoning our relationship or not, offering too many compromises or too few, or force my kid to unnecessarily miss out on a really worthwhile cake. And am I modeling the practices that any person would need to make a better self, or am I just making him angry and resentful of authority figures? I know I'm not the only person to have asked himself these questions, nor am I the first to have asked them under the watchful eye of family members and in-laws who may be silently critiquing my parenting practices. But the essential desire of the whole and pleasant exchange is to instill proper behavior in our kids. There's a health and nutrition angle, the not rewarding whiny behavior angle, the knowing what we want and what we get are not always going to be the same thing angle. I know all of this, but it's still not easy. Methods can be debated, but we cannot deny that the task of childhood and adulthood alike is to master self-control, to work towards becoming a better self, not content to remain unformed. The ancient rabbis knew this. Ezu gibor, they ask, hakovesh et yitro. Who is mighty? Those who conquer their negative impulses. As the book of Proverbs says, Tov erech apayim megibur, moshel rucho milochedir. One who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and one who rules over his spirit is greater than one who conquers a city. And you know, the only biblical character that the rabbis of the Talmud call a tzaddik, a righteous person, it's Joseph. Yosef. Joseph who is vain. Joseph who is unaware that his conversations offend everybody around him. Joseph who tortures his brothers by stringing them along. Joseph who tortures his father by letting him go decades without letting Jacob know that he's still alive and in Egypt. That Joseph is called a tzaddik. Why? Two competing reasons are given. One, when Joseph was a young man, and the Torah lets us know he was strikingly handsome, his boss's beautiful wife came on to him, repeatedly, day after day. And despite her best efforts, Joseph maintains his composure. The Torah is not shy about telling us about others without so much self-restraint, so Joseph is admired for his ability to overcome his urges and act for a greater good. Another reason is offered by an ancient midrash. When Joseph is reunited with his father Jacob, it seems Jacob still does not know that the brothers sold Joseph into slavery, and they let Jacob think all these years that Joseph was dead. Joseph, by now in complete command of the family and in command of all of Egypt, could have had an act of revenge of biblical proportions. He could have destroyed his brothers' reputations in the eyes of their beloved father. But Joseph stays silent. No verbal revenge, though it would have been so easy, and that must have been more than a little tempting. But no. When Joseph reunites with his father Jacob, Joseph hugs his father, they weep together, and Joseph does not tell. It is well possible that Jacob went to his grave, never knowing the full story of what happened with his sons. That willpower, that restraint in using words, tzaddik. That's what makes a righteous person. Not perfection, but learning to control negative urges in the face of great temptation, that's impressive. And because willpower seems to be, in the Jewish tradition, one of the key attributes, I picked up a book on the current state of the science of human willpower. I read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg this summer, partly because my summer reading is always geared towards the high holidays, and partly because I wanted to prove what I think is a central concept in Judaism, that one practices willpower day to day on regular things, like having the willpower to avoid non-kosher foods, having the willpower to plan life around Shabbat and holidays, and having the willpower to stop and pray 3 times a day in a world that doesn't favor people who do such things necessarily. Do that. Have that level of willpower, and you'll gain a greater mastery over negative urges and temptations. That could be one of the reasons for the system of ritual and ethical mitzvot. Practice with relatively common things, like resisting the inviting ham and Swiss sandwich, or being honest even in small dealings, and you'll have a strong habit of making choices that override your urges when you're unexpectedly faced with one of life's bigger ticket items. Cooking the books, adultery, using words to hurt other people. Master your urges, and your base urges will not be your master. And indeed, there it was in the book. I found it right there in Duhigg's book. Researchers uncovered that willpower functions like a muscle. But, to my horror, it said that the study suggested that if you exercise your willpower too much, you'll get tired and be more susceptible to let your urges run wild. And so, if you wasted your willpower on emails during the day, you'll be less likely to have the willpower to go for a run after work instead of collapsing on the couch. Or, even, that extramarital affairs are more likely to occur after exhausting one store of willpower following a long day of work. So there went my whole theory of Jewish life, and I couldn't even get my $25 back from Chapters. But before despairing too much, I dutifully turned the page. The next page of The Power of Habit said, the fact that willpower is analogous to a muscle also means that the more you exercise it, the stronger it can get. True, you can get exhausted. We all can. But you can also be energized. Later studies showed that when people exercised willpower in the service of something they felt was worthwhile, they strengthened the use of willpower positively in other areas of their lives. It worked across the board, in finances and diet and work habits and exercise routine, even in surprising areas like alcohol and tobacco use. As people strengthened their willpower muscles in one part of their lives, Duhigg writes, that strength spilled over into what they ate or how they worked. Once willpower became stronger, it touched everything. One researcher he quotes at Dartmouth University concluded, when you learn to force yourself to go to the gym or start your homework or eat a salad instead of a hamburger, part of what's happening is that you're changing how you think. People get better at regulating their impulses. They learn how to distract themselves from temptations, and once you've gotten into that willpower groove, your brain is practiced at helping you focus on a goal. It turns out that the current state of the research meshes nicely with my big theory of mitzvot. That's why signing kids up for piano lessons or sports is so important, he says. It has nothing to do with creating a great musician or a 5-year-old soccer star, the same researcher Todd Heatherton says. When you learn to force yourself to practice for an hour, you start building self-regulatory strength. Why then is there a drop-off in willpower at the end of a hard day? Motivation. The willpower is in fact within you, and you can call on it if you really want to, but at a certain point for people the cost-benefit equation changes, and the effort feels too great for the payoff at the end of an exhausting day. Does it work every time? Of course not. But is it worthwhile to try and use willpower to build habits that can improve our lives? Of course it is. That's why no dessert after dinner is a good rule, and why the 613 mitzvot are even better. We need self-control, we need practice, and we need a setting that helps us think about the important questions in life and how we're supposed to act on them. Because everyone says they want to do the right thing, especially now, especially on the high holidays. That's what you're supposed to say. That's too easy. Just talking about doing the right thing and thinking about it aren't enough. The Jewish tradition knows that we're a bundle of passions that we struggle to control, and that we hope that by actually controlling them in a small way, we'll gain the strength to control them in larger ways as well. Like training sessions before a marathon, like eating some sort of vegetable before diving into that cake. If we can control our appetites today, we can control them tomorrow and the next day as well. So prepare yourself for next week. Look at the things Yom Kippur will try to teach us to gain control of. Our appetite for food, for sex, for comfort, for vanity, for personal glory. How many of our misdeeds come from failure to control one of them? How much better could we be if we harnessed our appetites? We still feel an urge for things we must not act on. And we still will think thoughts that can't be made real. No need to make you feel guilty about that. The hidden things are between you and God. Judaism is much more concerned with what you do. And what you do must be to train your body, to train your mind, to do good. This only comes with practice, and it only comes with effort. That is why we have a system of mitzvot. The Midrash tells us, Rav Amar, Lo nitnu mitzvot, ela litzaref et habriot. The mitzvot were only given to refine humanity. They're there to make us stronger and act better to ourselves and to each other. That's what we mean when we say that the mitzvot connect us to God. They allow us to become more godly. What does God care if you leave here and go straight to work? What does God care if you leave here and go straight to the drive-thru at McDonald's? Do you think that'll harm God? But we can become stronger if we don't do it. And the stronger our resolve to do God's will in this world, the more godly our world can become. Mitzvot have a higher purpose as well, mystical meanings that touch on the nature of God, communal solidarity, personal meaning structure, fulfillment of a commandment. There are also ways to help us order our lives in ways that benefit ourselves and our surroundings, acts that surely are in divine favor. And they're everyday things. As the 19th century sage Rabbi Yisrael Salanter taught, a person is like a bird. A bird can fly very high, as long as it keeps moving its wings. If it stops flapping its wings, even for a moment, it will fall. So it is with people. This is what makes Judaism unique. It makes conservative Judaism uniquely powerful. We're asked to be active, not passive stewards of our tradition. We can see what happens when the full force of the Jewish tradition interacts with modern life, where ethics and science and Torah and Talmud all have a seat at the table. And it's true, it's not all dessert. Jewish life has its share of unappetizing dishes. But, as with any meal, as in any life, it's the integrity of the whole that makes the sweet parts even sweeter. And so my son, that night, never ate his dinner. The night before my sister-in-law's wedding. An elaborate dessert was served. He had none. It was not the outcome either of us had hoped for. But the journey of 1,000 miles, as they say. And so the next day was my sister-in-law's wedding, and I stood there with the happy couple, presiding over the bedekin, which is the lovely, touching veiling ceremony of the bride before it comes right before the chuppah. I saw, out of the corner of my eye, my son seizing the opportunity of me being at work to slide into the back of the room and stuff his face full of the Hershey's Kisses that were sprinkled all over the table. It's not the first time he's outmaneuvered me. It's not going to be the last. And it's okay. Because it's not about this chocolate or that one. It's about building your character. Building his character. To give him the tools to enjoy a life that's sweet. May we all be so blessed. And may we all have the strength to increase our blessings. Shana Tova U'Mituka, may it be inscribed for a good and a sweet year.